honestly, it's been a kind of a great week. There's a lot of stuff happened in the game, but I mainly want to talk about one thing, which is the fact that I've been calling this game an immersive sim, which is kind of strange because I mean, blah blah blah. We can talk about that for ages, but it doesn't look like your traditional immersive sim. Um, so the reason I've been doing that is because it's the whole idea for the project comes out of the idea of like what is where is the immersive sim headed, like after like Deathloop and those kinds of like very formalized, like, oh, you can solve each problem in multiple solutions, isn't that cool, kind of thing, where you get a very formalized, like, here's a lock, here's a key, oh wow, you're so smart. Like where that would be headed, and I try to like push it to like its maximum extreme, which of course is not really related to the immersive sim that deeply anymore, and blah blah blah. um, but I got thinking about this stuff this week, and I remembered something that I like, a kind of theory I set up for how to think about like games, which is that there's always a hard part and a soft part of a game. When you look at something like Dark Souls, for example, you have the enemies that are moving around, and you can easily like change their stats or change their positioning and all of that. And then you have the hard stuff. You have the geometry, right? Like once you build such an environment, you're not just going to change it again. This is too expensive. But you can easily place enemies or remove them or like shift them around a little bit. And in a game like Rain World, you have the similar thing, right? You have like the soft body enemies that can be in many different positions and in many different states, and they have like different evolutions. But the world is always solid because it's very hard to make a tile set thing look great and like be like once it's there, right? There's this contrast between like hard stuff and soft stuff. You even have it in like text-based games like Disco Elysium, where of course like you can't really like change stuff in the world physically, but the plot of the game is very solid. The murder happened. You're not going to change who did it. You're only going to change how you look at the world while you figure out who did it. Like the dynamic part is like your internal monologue. And the hard part is the world. So you always have this kind of like dichotomy. You have like hard and soft stuff. And in Mussolina you have the same thing, right? Like we have the hard levels, and they're just like, that's a level. And then you get the tools, which are dynamic. They're soft, they change, they can be whatever. They're random. They're like the most dynamic they can be, because it's pure chaos. So that dichotomy is in Mussolina too. I was thinking about the term immersive sim, and I was like, oh shit, I have to probably I should check out the essay I wrote about immersive sims. I should check that out again. I hadn't listened to my Dishonored essay in quite some time. But it's essentially the thing that kind of like started my interest in the whole thing and like indirectly led to Mussolina. So I checked it out again, and then very quickly, let me pull up my notebook. And then very quickly I realized something very important that I had completely forgotten to include in Mussolina. Because an immersive sim, in some ways, right? We can argue about the shit for forever. Who cares? Immersive sim has this quality of saying like, okay, so there's mutually exclusive content that changes in response to your accumulative dynamic gameplay. And what that essentially means in less like pretentious terms is that the world will react to how you play. That is like one of the promises of the immersive sim. So this is where the hard and the soft part of all of these games that I've been talking about before, this is where they meet. This is where they shake hands. You have the world, and you have your actions, and then your actions change the world significantly. You don't just open a door, you like close 5 doors in the next level or whatever. You just have this impact on the hard part of the game that's missing from Mussolina. So that was like the main. There's a lot of structural reworks again, but they're not so important. The main thing is that I added a way for your gameplay to change the levels. What that means is that when you, let's say you play really well and you don't die for like a certain amount of times in a row, that means a switch is going to flip in the background of Mussolina, and it's going to change every single level. And now every single level is switched to a harder version of itself. And then there's other variables as well. It doesn't just track, how often do you die. It also tracks like how many items do you use, and do you collect the coins, or do you push them off the corner. And then each of those variables has a unique switch to the level. So they all impact different parts of the level. So it's like a more dynamic system. It's not just like, oh, you've been good or you've been bad. It's like, oh, you've been good in jumping, but you've been bad in collecting, and therefore the level now has this unique configuration. And this really kicks stuff up into a very chaotic version of the game. This is now I've been play testing it a lot, and it's just like I'm not really. You can probably see it in the footage of the previous devlogs where it's like, yeah, I just play it. I just go through whatever. I don't really give a shit because I've played these levels for such a long time and I know these tools so well. And I'm kind of like, it's been like 4 months or something of playing. I'm through it kind of. But with these new unforeseen combinations of changes to the hard stuff, to the hard part of the game, suddenly I'm engaged again. Suddenly I'm clueless again. Suddenly I'm excited again. So I imagine that it will be a nice thing for the end game of Mussolina, and that also means that I need to make the earlier parts of the game extremely easy, because the later parts of the game are extremely hard, and there needs to be some sort of ramp in between there. Otherwise, nobody's going to be able to play it. So yeah, that was my main part of Mussolina. That was like the main thing I wanted to talk about. So you asked some questions, and I will answer them this time. I will not forget. First Prime Hunter asks if I have considered setting up a Discord server, and the answer to that is yes, I have considered it, and I'm probably not going to do it because I'm not a big fan of parasociality, but at some point it might be necessary to make a living. Who knows? Deleloper asks if I want to make a sandbox level or like a level editor, and I will probably not be able to do that just for technical reasons. That's always the case. I'm making this in Construct 3, which answers the question of Ethan Santiago 7013. Construct 3 is possible. Loot Bandit did something like that a couple of years ago, but I cannot. Camden B asks, what's with the 3 dice? The dice in the previous devlogs, that was just a kind of like a numerical icon I used to discern the different levels. They now have different icons, I think. It's like Roman numerals now. And Jumbona asks, Producer 2022 when? 2027. At the same time when Mussolina comes out. Until that happens, wishlist it please, so that we can launch exclusively on PlayStation 4.